Welcome to the Red Letters Podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore topics that can be life-transforming while delivering a message of hope. Tony, Ida, today on Red Letters, we're going to be talking about mental discipline. How excited are you guys about talking about this? I am hyped.
Most people don't like that D word.
No, right? Because discipline, I guess, means something bad to a lot of people.
Well, I think discipline in itself, I know we're talking about the mind, and it all really kind of starts from there because how you prepare your mind can dictate what you walk out in life. Even though it could be seen as something negative, it's something super positive if you know how to use it for your benefit and to help lay down a foundation for yourself and where you want to go.
Exactly.
In life, you know.
Yeah, so there's actually a book. I got to give credit to my nephew who's not here, Sean Rios, but he gave me this book, and it's really, really good, and it has a lot of information on how, if you're trying to change your life, if you're trying to do better in life, if you're trying to become successful in any area of your life, it starts with mental discipline, because it starts by changing the way that you think, changing the way that you talk in order to become this person that you want to be. So if you're a person that likes to wake up late every day, but you want something out of life, you want this job, and most jobs start at 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, then you have to discipline yourself to start waking up at an earlier time. But how do you do that? Well, it comes by practice. So we have to start practicing. We have to write some goals for ourselves, and then we have to follow those goals.
Discipline too. I think when you turn around and you actually have a vision of where you want to go in life, it's easier to incorporate discipline because you have an end goal in mind. But if you don't have an end goal and you're just living day to day, you're normally not going to be somebody who's disciplined. And I think those are two ways of looking at it. And being disciplined and saying, hey, I'm going to make these necessary changes. There's a book that I read called The Compound Effect. I forgot the author, but he was talking about the little changes you make. Even though they seem so minimal, the little changes you make at the end of the year is a big deal. It's like a huge change, but you're just chipping away at it day by day. And it was just saying all the different things that you could do to change, just like, you know, like you said about, we'll just use the example of waking up. Some people don't want to wake up at a certain time because there's no goal for the day, much less your life. But turning around and having to... being willing to offset that, meaning, okay, you want to get up earlier, so why don't you go to bed earlier? You know, because that's a conversation I have with some people. They don't want to do the going to bed earlier, so they won't ever get up earlier. You know, you have to make the adjustments in your life so that you could bear more fruit in your life.
Exactly, yes. And, you know, I love to watch boxing only because my husband loves it. So I actually really enjoy boxing. But I wonder how much a boxer uses mental discipline. And the reason I say this is because they focus on getting in shape with their body. And I've offered this to my husband, like, I would love to go talk to these boxers, because he goes to the gym, and actually like have them work on their mind, because how bad do you want this? And they're working, and they're very disciplined with the body. They do the exercise, rigorous exercise, where they're constantly out there. They're doing all this running, uphill, downhill. Like, to me, it's too much. But I get it. But why didn't they win the fight? So it's like, because did they believe they could win the fight? And where was their mind at? The physical looks good, and it looks like they can do it. But at the end of the day, and I know not everybody's going to win, but when you train right, and you use all your body, including the mental, are you not going to meet your goals? I'm just wondering. We have a football player in here, and he could probably tell us more about what mental discipline is and how do you apply it to your everyday life, because it carries over. It's not just going to be on the football field. Am I correct? Here, it's going to be in every area of your life that you decide to use it.
And right before we introduce him, I just want to touch on that boxing topic super quick, because I just heard this the other day, and actually it was the second time I heard it. I was reminded of it. But Mike Tyson, when he was in the boxing ring, he was a terror. People almost knew they weren't going to probably last a round or 2 rounds with this guy, because he was such an animal in the ring. But the one guy that he turned around and lost to was a guy named Buster Douglas. Well, Buster Douglas, he turned around and he was the only person that ever got knocked out by Tyson and got back up. And they went and asked him, they said, man, how did you get back up? Not one other person ever did. And he said, I had to make a choice. He goes, the choice was was my mother told me that I was going to be world champion someday.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
And
gave me chills.
and she just passed away 2 days ago.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
So because she passed away 2 days ago, he had to make the choice. Am I going to let my dream die with my mom? Or am I going to get up and discipline my mind to get my mind right so my body could stand up and go one more round?
Right.
He ends up beating Mike Tyson.
Yes.
But he attributes it because of something his mom said, that it was
The belief
a
system.
mindset
Yeah.
that he chose to capture and walk out in his life.
Yeah. I could be world champion. I
Exactly.
can be world champion. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So today's guest, we have my son, Dominic Gudino, as one of the guests regarding discipline, because he's had to walk out some of this even on the football field.
Pleasure to be here. When I first think of discipline and mental discipline, I kind of had initially a misconstrued idea in thinking that mental toughness was the same as mental discipline.
Okay.
In the way that I thought that.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
And
Okay.
when I think of mental toughness, I always thought of like, you're gonna get yelled at, you're gonna get your butt chewed out, you're gonna get beaten to a pulp at some point in
Yeah.
time. But like my dad said, you're gonna get yourself up. I think
Yeah.
that's mental toughness. I think the idea of how Buster Douglas, when he got knocked down, I think the discipline is what helped him prepare for that fight and what allowed him to get to the point where he was able to get in the ring with Mike Tyson. But his mental toughness was what allowed him to
win.
allow him to be able to get knocked down and get back
Get
up.
back up. Yeah.
When it comes to the idea of mental discipline, I was always, when it comes to the power of the mind, initially, there was a lot of research in the sense of your brain will tell your body to stop working, and it'll basically like tell yourself that you're out of the like gas in the tank. Because in high school I did this Navy SEAL training, and they're one of the biggest on mental toughness and mental discipline, things like that. One of the things that they said is that your mind will always tell you that you don't have enough
Yeah.
when your body still does. Your mind will always try to protect yourself and hold yourself back because it thinks that you're about to push yourself
Too
off
far.
the cliff. But in all reality, you've got 25% more in the tank that you just need to be able to untap. When it comes to mental discipline, I think it comes down to just the ability to really just kind of hone back in on what's important and what you're doing it for and that purpose.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a purpose, that mental discipline is all for naught. It's built on sand. But yeah, that's
So for you, when you were out in the field and training, obviously you have to train the physical body, right? But there was something you would hear in your head that said, I have to be the best at, what was your position? I'm sorry.
offensive line. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you had to be the best at that because you're protecting somebody, right? So it wasn't just the physical body, it was the mental saying, I can do this. I'm equipped to do this. You had already made up your mind that I'm going to be the best at what I'm doing because I have to protect somebody.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's where the mental discipline comes in, that he had already made up his mind. When you stepped into that field, I don't care who's coming, they're not going to get past me. Right? So that's where the mental discipline is. It's you train the physical body because when it comes to what you were doing, you have to be tough physically, but also you have to be tough mentally. You have to be able to take out the opponent, just like in boxing, I would think.
And you can't be confident in yourself without being prepared. And I feel like without being properly prepared, you can
Yeah.
never have mental toughness, mental discipline.
Discipline, yeah.
You need to practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Perfect practice. Oh, good.
And so that was the idea that I had, is that if I don't visualize, because we would do these things, EDDs, everyday drills, super annoying basic stuff where it was back to Pop Warner football where you're literally taking your steps in the beginning of the day. But it was so crucial to start the day because you weren't doing your football stuff for 24 hours
Yeah.
in that span. And being an offensive lineman, we were doing so many things that are unnatural in the sense of like, you're told you need to be in a squatted position, backpedal and stop somebody that's 320 plus pounds running full speed at your face.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And you have to feel confident that you can stop him.
That you can yeah.
And so that was the thing, is like those little steps, I had to visualize, okay, this is somebody standing here. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing all this. And then when I got into the game, it didn't make sense until I think probably like my third or fourth year into college when the game literally just started slowing down.
Oh, okay.
And it was because I started realizing that like I was visualizing these game time moments while I was practicing and visualizing these outcomes before I had ever even gotten to the point where I can perform them.
Oh, okay.
And I had visualized.
That's good.
I had visualized being in football. We have situational drills, and so like we'll practice a 2-minute drill once or twice a week, and usually 9 out of 10 times you don't use it during a game,
Right.
and it's not going to be super crucial. But coaches prepare their team for those situations because I remember I think it was my sophomore year we played at Arizona State University. We were down 3 points or something like that, and we had just gotten the ball back with like less than 2 minutes left, all the way back on our side of the field. And going back to that 2-minute drill that we had practiced 100 times in the off season, in the fall,
Right.
and walkthroughs and things like that. And we just thought, okay, like this is annoying because we're running and it's against air. We don't know how to do this stuff. But it's all those little things like you don't realize that preparation
Yeah.
allows you to be confident in your mental capability and allows you
Yes.
to rely on your mental discipline because you've disciplined yourself prior to
You're needing it.
the actual game time.
You said something. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
You said something. You said basic stuff, and I think a lot of people tend to overlook the basic stuff. I'm sure you've gone through physical therapy. Okay, and when you're in physical therapy, the doctor or the physical therapist will tell you, I need you to do this. For example, something that you're never going to use in life, but it's building a muscle that you can't see that's going to help you in the long run. Once you get out there doing whatever it is that you're going to do, that comes into play. So for like, they make me do these exercises in physical therapy where I'm rolling something up a wall. And I hate him so much, but he tells me, Mary, do you know that you don't use this muscle as much, but it's building it. When you do physical therapy, it's going to build and strengthen that. So when we talk about mental discipline, it's those little basic things that we tend to not think about because it's like, they're so basic. I'm really never going to need this. Yes, because you're building it, you're strengthening it. And when it comes to being on the field, and when I'm using field metaphorically, because when it comes to doing life, you're going to need those basic skills that you learn that you thought were so mundane. Like, why do I need this? It's like you needed it because right here, it's where it's going to come into play. So I'm glad that you mentioned basic stuff because I think a lot of us think that way and we have to change our thinking and we have to change. And I'll use another example with money. A lot of people say, I can't save any money. Well, I don't have any. Well, if you have $3, save $1. And then if you make $10, save $1 out of that because you do have the money. You just don't want to do the basic, which is saving that $1 because your mind says, I won't have enough. But what if your mind instead said, well, if I save it now, I'll have more and it keeps building. Just like that little muscle we didn't think we needed in physical therapy. Just like what your coach was telling you. And you think in the moment, it's so basic. But when you got out there, it all came into play. It all came full circle. Yes. So thank you for that.
I think that discipline too, I think we kind of said it without saying it, but there's a thing called muscle memory that you're actually building in the process because you do it so repetitive and you're intentional about the practice behind the scenes and the day to day so that when you need to do it, your muscle memory can pull that without you having to actually think. It becomes more of a reflex because of all the discipline you put into it. So muscle memory is a big deal regarding discipline because it's muscle memory. Think about it. You're building that muscle of that particular event or what you're practicing because you might need it at a certain time, and you could retract that and have it apply right when you need it most.
So it's your conditioning,
Yeah,
the mental.
the conditioning is another good word.
Discipline. Yeah, that's really good.
What were some of the biggest challenges you had, Dominic, regarding disciplining yourself? Because you could always turn around and do what's expected of you, or the coach tells you this, and that. But at some point, what separates the okay people from the great people is the people that turn around and choose to discipline themselves. In other words, hey, coach, I appreciate it. I'm doing everything you're doing, but I'm going beyond that when I don't have to. And when you're not looking, I'm still doing that.
And let me add to that question, Tony.
Go ahead.
Also, can you, and I'm not asking you to throw anybody in there, did you notice that some of the people, I can't do this. I'm not as strong. Like if what Tony said, and then with this, like comparing yourself to the person that's mentally disciplined as opposed to the person that says I'm going to be on the field, however, doesn't believe in himself. I don't know if you had situations like that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because these are your teammates, and your life also depends that they're able to do their part.
Yeah, you're in the trenches with them.
Yes.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I love offensive line specifically is because you had 5 guys working as one. Like offensive line was one position, but in that one position, there's 5 different individuals making up that core offensive line.
Okay.
You have a left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, and all 5 of those guys need to see the same picture every single time and know that the other person next to him is got
Doing
their
the same
back
thing.
and doing the
Okay.
exact same thing, seeing the same thing without having to communicate too much. Because when it comes to my dad's question in the sense of the disciplining yourself, I think that was kind of something that I had ingrained in myself kind of earlier on in high school because I was always told that I wasn't tall enough. And yeah, I was, believe it or not, I was short for my position. I was very undersized. I was told by a lot of the coaches that I was training with that I was going to need to be the smartest guy on the field. I need to be the fastest guy on the field. I need to set myself apart in some way because I knew that I wasn't going to pass that eye test.
Oh, okay.
And that was the thing that I saw. I had people that were my peers. I knew 110% that they were not putting in as much effort as me.
Okay.
But because God had just blessed them with physical, like the physical height and just ability, just naturally, they just didn't have to work as hard to go as far.
Oh, okay.
And that was one of those things that forced me to be kind of hyper aware of my performance. And one of the things that I'm kind of bringing back an old memory of me and my dad is when I first started playing football, he had told me, I think later on, like high school, like midway high school towards junior, senior year. I remember this because it's stuck in my head. He had basically apologized for me or for being jealous of the other parents in Pop Warner because I wasn't quarterback, running back or things like that. Because he didn't really understand an offensive lineman and how it was important. And to be honest, I didn't either as a kid. It was always the biggest kid got put on the O-line because they could stand in front of people.
Something,
yeah. And it was one of those things that like my dad told me, he was like, I had basically opened up his eyes to the importance of football or offensive line. He said that he can now cheer for me as I block because he knows what to look for because I've showed him how much it means to me as an offensive lineman. It kind of put it in perspective because I didn't realize how much discipline it took myself because being an offensive lineman, you're like the AC. You're only noticed when you're not working.
Oh, okay.
And it was one of those things like you were always blamed for the bad games and you never got praised for the really good games because the quarterback was always throwing the great ball and wide receivers were catching them and everything. And you just kind of had to be your own biggest fan, but also your biggest critic too.
Right.
And that's what kind of helped me going forward. So I don't think that was a huge issue when it came to athletics, but it definitely was hard outside of athletics because I didn't have a coach telling me, hey, you have to do this. You have to be here 15 minutes early. You have to do this and this and this because you got to meet these schedule requirements. Now that I'm outside of college and outside of football, it was pretty hard for me to adjust because I didn't have a set day-to-day schedule. I had to now almost create my own discipline now and be my own coach because now I'm on my own. Not that I don't have my parents or anything like that, but in adulting life, like you are responsible for your responsibilities. Like
exactly.
You're an individual. You're going to take the blame if your life goes
whatever.
south
Whatever
or anything
happens.
like that. And you don't have a coach to be like, oh yeah, he told me to do this. Like I did everything correct and it still went bad.
Right.
I don't have that anymore. So I think that was one of the big realizations that mental discipline goes way beyond just athletics and things like that because how you approach the little things in life is how you approach everything in life.
In life. So good.
And that was one of the things that I had to realize because I didn't put the same effort into my day-to-day life as I did my athletic life.
Oh, okay.
My spiritual and relationship with God like had definitely suffered throughout my high school and college years because I had drawn myself and enveloped myself and
total focus
and tied myself into football that was my identity.
Okay.
And I kind of shared I've shared this a few times and me and Kinley had talked about this a lot.
Your fiance.
Kelly's your fiance
My
now?
fiance.
Yes.
She basically was the one that kind of pushed it a little bit into focus because my last 2 years of football, I ended up rupturing the flexor tendon on my snap hand. As a center, you need your hand. So I couldn't play the 2020 season COVID year. And then 2021, the next season, literally the first day back, I got cleared fully from my hand surgery.
Oh, nice.
We went and we were doing a summer conditioning and it was the last thing of the day. We were doing some burpees into a sprint and I landed for my last burpee and I felt like I had gotten shot in the back of my ankle and my Achilles completely snapped. That was going to be out. I was out for another surgery literally the next morning. And so after that, I was out and literally football was taken away from me
Oh goodness.
when I
yeah,
thought I was going to be ready to go professional. I thought I was going to be getting ready for the draft and pro day, and all those things were in my head. And then God was like, "Hey, you can't do this without me."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was
So
like one
good.
of those things. I was like, I was trying so hard. I put everything into
Into
football.
it,
Like
yeah.
I felt like I was doing everything right, but in all reality, I didn't have that.
You didn't put the source ahead of
I
everything
didn't. Yeah,
else.
exactly.
Okay.
And I realized that it was almost God kind of pulling me by my ear, because
Yeah.
it was like, you can't do this on your own.
You can't. Oh, that's so
And,
good.
and it sounds like early on when you said that you didn't have the size, and for a lineman you weren't as tall and as big as you were supposed to be. It's almost like you had to overcompensate one, but then you almost had to play with the chip on your shoulder to get that edge to get to where you needed to be, right? Okay. There's a statement that The Rock says often, and I just want your thoughts on that, where he turns around and it's regarding discipline as well. But he says that I choose to be the hardest worker in the room. And I remember watching an interview of him and the Lakers at one point, and he was turning around and he was kind of cursing and saying, "Not one of you blankety blank blank blanks will outwork me." He goes, "I don't care. I'll get up before you. I'll go to bed later than you. I'm going to work harder you in between those two times. You won't be able to touch the effort that I'm bringing forth." How true do you think that is? And have you ever had to kind of pick up that mentality?
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. I definitely had to pick up that mentality in high school for sure. I definitely lost a little bit of focus in college because I just was not focused. But when it came to high school, I definitely had to adopt that mentality, because I had, like I said, I had people that were 6'5" in the school that was next to me that was not putting in anywhere near as much work.
Right.
And he had already, I think, like 4 or 5 scholarship offers to like Division I schools. I'm like, what the heck?
Just because of the way he
Yeah,
looked.
and just because he had the uncoachable, so you
Yeah.
can't coach height and
Weight and all that good
strength
stuff,
and all
yeah.
that stuff. Like that was the realization that like I need to set myself apart in the work ethic. But I forgot who I heard this from. Always realize that there's someone out there doing what you're doing 5 minutes earlier, one extra rep. They're
Yeah.
doing one extra set. They're doing 30 minutes extra, whatever they're doing. They're watching just an hour more of film than you. And with that mentality, it was like, I need to beat that person. I need to make sure that I'm that over-prepared person, because if I did that, I would be allowed to go into a game with the confidence that I can beat anybody who is in front of me.
Right.
But also have the chip on my shoulder and the realization that at any point in time, this is a game that I can be beat.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing that's going to be set in stone. And I think that's one of the aspects of like outworking people, is that it helps you so much in the actual performance aspect and when you need to actually perform. So if you don't have that work ethic, I think it's a lot harder to be that prepared. But like how The Rock said, like if you have that confidence that you know that you're going to outwork everybody that is in the room, then you, and I follow him and I see how he has his iron paradise.
Yeah.
And the dude the dude works hard.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, like, I don't think I could say that he's wrong.
Right,
Because
exactly, yeah.
He's
he
dominating
wants it.
industries.
Yeah, the dude went from University of Miami playing football to not having a football career to then going to the WWE and then out of nowhere going to acting, and then now he's doing all different types of stuff. And
Yeah.
then the dude is a Swiss Army knife of all
Giftings and
types.
talents.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think it's because God gave it to him.
No.
I think it was because God gave him the work ethic, the mentality, the
And he had
mental discipline
to go
to
forth
be able
and do
to
it.
be like, okay, even if I don't know how to do it, I know who to reach out to. I know who I need to
follow.
Surround
bring
yourself
around.
with.
Yeah, exactly. Because who you allow in your circle is who
What
you
you
allow
become.
yourself to become.
Yes.
It was that whole saying, like, show me who your
Friends
friends
are.
are, and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So 100%, a person needs to be there 100% and give a little extra more for mental discipline to be in place so you can win. And even when you don't win because there's somebody else out there, doing just the extra or whatever. But if you really want to become the best at anything, you got to give it 100%. So like I asked you earlier, when you were working alongside other individuals and you noticed that they were very negative, because it happens like in the field, how was the game impacted working alongside with someone who was negative? So they didn't have the mental discipline. They might have had the physique, but they didn't have the mental discipline.
Or your interaction with them.
Yeah, or your interactions
Yeah.
with them.
Well, I think more often than not, you only realize those people in specific situations. And for me in football, it was always when you were down. like, and you're down by a touchdown left, and you had one last chance to score. You could tell who really believed it and who didn't by looking at them.
Right. Okay.
You could just tell. And I've been a part of some really special teams that were able to have some pretty awesome years. Unfortunately, we didn't win the championship, but we got all the way to the championship.
That's good.
When there was a lot of things that we shouldn't have made it all the way up there. We should have lost a lot more games.
Right.
But you could tell because we had the work that we put in the off season. You could just look at those guys, and when we did lose and we did have those shortcomings, because it was by any means it was not perfect. We didn't have that comeback seed, like that last second drive where we score and we win. Because I was on the losing side of I'd never won a championship in my entire athletic career. That's one of my big unfortunate look backs is that I never won a championship.
But you're in some of the games.
I played in 3 or 4 championships. Never been able to say that I won any of them. But I think that comes down to just those are the moments where you realize that that other team that you were playing or something like that they just had that group, that unit, that it was just sometimes it's just their time to win. Sometimes we just weren't prepared. I've been in parts of games where we just knew that week of practice, we just didn't believe.
Right.
We didn't think that we were going to win. We didn't think that we needed to prepare as hard. And you realize that we had a bad thing with our offense when I was there at college, was that we played to our opponent's level.
Oh, wow.
So if we were playing against Stanford, you were going to realize that we came Monday through Thursday and Friday. We had a different mentality throughout practice. How we approached everything, the hits, the intensity in practice was completely different. But then we would go against a smaller team that was not as high caliber.
Oh, okay then.
And then it would still be a super close game because we decided that we didn't need to bring.
Level.
We didn't need to
You
prepare
bring
as
your
much.
A game.
Didn't bring the A game.
And so I was definitely. I couldn't say that I wasn't part of that because I definitely had experience where this is an easy game. We should beat them. We should blow them out of the water. And then out of nowhere they come out swinging up on 21-0, and all of a sudden I'm like, how the heck did that happen?
How did that happen?
And it's because we just didn't prepare, and we didn't believe, we didn't take it serious. We didn't do anything with it with a good intent.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
That's good.
All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
I do. One really quick. Romans 12:2, it says that do not conform to the patterns of this world, but to be renewed by the be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Thank you. I knew she'd know it. To be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So that's mental discipline in itself. And what that means to me, it's this. I wanted to be somebody new, but I had to give it 100% of this new stuff. And what that new stuff was, the God stuff. So mental discipline meant I have to fill myself up with that, and it's not going to happen overnight. And the way that in the book it explains it, and Dom talked about it a little bit. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I already butchered the sister earlier. It was like the basic stuff. So he talks about a stonesmith or a guy who works with big rocks. And he said that one guy was sitting there watching this guy working, and he's with this big old hammer and he's hitting this huge stone. And he said, that seems like such a meaningless job. Why would you do that? He's not doing anything. And he would hit it every day. He went into work and he was doing the same thing, hitting the rock in the same spot. But when it came to the time, he said, I wouldn't do it again. And the guy who was working on it, he said, I always know that on the 100th hit, it's going to break open. And what does that mean? Sometimes you have to do 100 little steps. It's going to take doing it 100 times. It's going to take believing in yourself more than just saying it. It's walking it out. Because with that one last hit, it may be 100 hits. It may be 100 mornings that you wake up and you say something different to yourself where you start believing it when it's going to break. And that old new is gone, and that new you that God created to be within you starts to surface. So that's mental discipline at its best, but it starts with the basic stuff. And then you build up to become this great whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, and as we go ahead and wrap up, another thought that I had too is you could turn around and have talent, you could have the gifting, you could have all of that, but if you don't have discipline, you're gonna fall short at some point. You're not gonna accomplish what your life might be set up to accomplish. You have to have the drive, you have to have the tenacity to go the extra mile. And I know we've said do 100%, but it's probably gonna require even more. Where your body says 100%, your mind says you need need to put in 110.
We can go a little
You
more,
know,
yeah.
and if you go through life, and I know we were talking about sports and football and stuff like that, but it doesn't matter what category or what you're chasing in life. If you have the audacity to turn around and believe that somebody's working behind the scenes trying to take your spot, you'll live different. You'll make right choices. You'll do things that you probably wouldn't have done otherwise if you realize somebody's chasing, somebody wants to take your spot and eliminate your position.
Yes.
So if you go through life, I'm not talking in a bitter way, but more of an inspirational way
Yes.
for you to go as hard as you can and keep running and chasing until you surpass even your own ideas.
Doesn't matter how many times you fall down.
Exactly. Get back
knocked
up
down, yeah. Get
and
back
keep
up.
on going.
It actually, there was a statement that said, people overestimate what they could do in a year and underestimate what they could do in 10. And that's basically just don't feel like everything's going to happen right away.
Exactly, yeah.
It's going to take time. It's going to take investment. And then you see the fruits.
Yes.
There you go. That's a perfect closing comment. Thank you for joining us on this
Thank
week's
you.
Red Letters. Take care. We'll see you next week.